Today's the National Day of Prayer, and this is a day that's set aside mostly with an emphasis on praying for our nation. That's why it's called the National Day of Prayer. The focus is on our public life as American citizens. And I think it's good to set aside time to pray for our nation. I don't really want to talk about praying for our nation in this video. I want to talk about prayer in a more general sense. And I want to recommend what I think is a very helpful resource on prayer. There are a lot of books about prayer. There's so many it can be a little overwhelming to know where to begin if you're just perusing a Christian bookstore. And I have nothing to say against new books on prayer. I haven't read really any really new books on prayer, but I would recommend a more time-tested, older resource, Martin Luther's Small Catechism. One of the last sections of Luther's Catechism is devoted to the Lord's Prayer. And Luther does, I think, a brilliant job just explaining the Lord's Prayer and helping us understand what we're really saying when we say the Lord's Prayer. So if you've never read Luther's Catechism, the section on prayer, the Lord's Prayer, I highly recommend you do that. This catechism was designed for families to use, for Christian fathers particularly to use to teach their children the truths of the Christian faith. So it's written in a very accessible way. It's not some esoteric theological work. It's a very accessible work. Luther, in his other writings, has often extolled the Lord's Prayer as being a prayer that's wonderful for us to have, because if we're praying according to the Lord's Prayer, we know that we're praying in a way that pleases God, because this is the prayer that Christ taught us. Luther said if there was any better prayer for us to pray, Christ would have taught us that one. So this is a prayer that we know pleases the heart of God when we set our hearts to pray this way. And Luther just brings out things in the Lord's Prayer that I never would have thought to think of. The Lord's Prayer is a prayer that we've all heard so much and prayed so much that we can get a little desensitized to the beauty and the wonder of it. One thing that I really appreciate about Luther is his emphasis on why God hears our prayers. God hears our prayers because He's promised to. Because we pray in the name of Christ, not according to our own merits. And God has promised that we approach Him in the name of His Son. He hears us. And so the depth of emotion that we bring to the table, the intensity of feeling, it's nothing wrong with praying with deep feeling and emotion, but that's not something that in any way puts God in a position where He has to pay extra special close attention to our prayers. Luther famously said, we pray because we're unworthy to pray. And we become worthy to pray precisely when we risk everything on God's faithfulness alone, when we approach deeply aware of how unworthy we are to pray. He said that it's faith in God's promise that makes a prayer acceptable. If we didn't have faith in God's promise, we could be sweating drops of blood. We're so intense in our emotion, and it wouldn't matter, because that's not what God is looking for. He's looking for faith. And Luther also pointed out the importance of praying when we don't feel like it. Not waiting until a more opportune time, but to pray when you least feel like it. To pray when you're experiencing a barrage of trials and temptations, and not waiting until a more peaceful frame of mind to pray in the moment when you least feel like it. Because when you least feel like it is when you most need it. Anyway, so highly recommend it. Luther's Catechism also has a sample for how families can do devotion in the evening and in the morning. So it's a great resource. So, happy National Day of Prayer, and thank you for watching this video.